Hello, this is DC Hammer, and this is the DC Hammer Show. Let's start out with this article by the Epoch Times indicating that, as you would already know from a lot of the reporting that we've already gone through in the past week, the Chinese regime's infiltration of the West is taking place through a variety of techniques, including through overseas organizations. As previously reported, even though the Red Dragon, Communist China, has made it appear that it actually has activated groups of entrepreneurs, capitalists within its structure in order to drive corporations, its business entities forward in order to compete on the international scene. Truly, most of these organizations and most of these entrepreneurs are but extensions of the Red Dragon. They owe their complete allegiance to the communist state. They follow the orders directly from people like Xi Jinping, and they do what they're told, including billionaire Wang Jingmo, a community leader in Australia. But really all he is an extension of the communist regime, the Red Dragon's tentacles, pushing to other countries and ensuring that what takes place in those countries is done in a way that is a detriment to the countries in which they are attacking and benefits Communist China. So don't be fooled when you see information coming out from these organizations, whether it be supposed private companies operating out of the Red Dragon, out of the Communist China, or nonprofits and other organizations that act as if they are truly trying to benefit the countries in which they are based. They are truly just extensions of the Communist Chinese regime in Beijing. This comes to us from the Daily Signal, entitled Frank Talk at the Munich Security Conference. So President Trump has sent Vice President Mike Pence, who met with Merkel and other leaders in Europe. It was our largest delegation in 5 decades, appearing before the annual Munich Security Conference. And so as hundreds of delegates from around the world meet in plush hotels and wine and dine themselves together, there still is some serious business to discuss and to deal with. So Vice President Pence opened up the meeting last Friday. After mentioning accomplishments of the Trump administration, then he called on members of NATO to meet the goal for defense spending. They need to step up and start, for the first time since NATO was created, actually fairly fund their portion of the activity. So even though President Trump had already made significant headway in getting them to pony up what they should in order to protect themselves, we need to still press them further, and that's exactly what's happening in this series of meetings. And Vice President Pence went on to poke Europe in the face, the NATO allies, quote unquote, for trying to get around the sanctions on Iran and then thereby fostering the world's leader in terrorism. And he said the time has come for our European partners to stop undermining U.S. sanctions against this murderous revolutionary regime. So he's not pulling back any punches, and he is then trying to get the ball across the goal line, and that would be to the point where, number one, these NATO countries fully bear the burden of the expense it costs to keep them free, and number two then is when we do things to protect the world, such as sanctions on Iran, that they don't do end arounds in order to benefit themselves and to undermine our interests. Speaking about undermining our interests, this comes from the Washington Free Beacon. This report indicates that there's widespread national food stamp fraud that totals at least $1 billion, that's a minimum, and could be as high as $4.7 billion. So in other words, just food stamp fraud alone, if we were to clamp down on that, would provide the money that we would need in order to finish the border wall between the United States and Mexico. Once again, proving the hypocrisy of the Democrats in Congress, who couldn't pony up the paltry sum that we would need in comparison to other budget items to secure our southern border. They are fully willing to completely fund efforts such as food stamps in order to grease the palms of the people that vote for them, but are unwilling to pony up the cash that we need in order to protect the entire country. So I believe that as we continue to shine light on darkness, as we continue to turn this ship around that was heading over the falls, riding on a sea of corruption and broken laws, that we will return to equal justice under the law and tighten up programs such as this. And as other measures are taken by the Trump administration, the funds that the Democrats cry and say that we don't have enough to spread around to do things such as protect ourselves with the walls will become fully available in the future. And according to the Western Journal, through its conservative Tribune outlet, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez hit the ground running and sure did catch on to what the swamp is all about. She's already been caught in an ethics dilemma by putting her boyfriend on the staff roster, which means that her boyfriend, web developer Riley Roberts, is suddenly considered a staff person for the United States House of Representatives. That would be in the support of his girlfriend, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and it appears that he is receiving taxpayer dollars in order to work now for her. So I would think that very soon there will be an ethics inquiry into the behavior of our freshman member of the House from Brooklyn. But until that light shines on the darkness, it may not happen right away. This also comes to us from the Western Journal, this from their World News section. And it's interesting how on this side of the big pond, we seem to be reluctant to take on the tech giants, even though there was a groundswell of opinion that Facebook, Twitter, and others should be taken to task for their totalitarian approach to the technology that they provide us. And lawmakers in once Great Britain are slamming Facebook as digital gangsters, recommending stricter regulations. So British lawmakers issued a scathing report this week, yesterday, and calls for tougher rules to keep Facebook and other tech firms from acting like digital gangsters, which they absolutely do, and intentionally violating data privacy and competition laws. If only we would have, I guess, some lawmakers in this country that would have the gumption that the lawmakers in Britain, a few of them still have, in order to produce this kind of a report to poke the eye of the tech giant over in Silicon Valley. Breitbart brings us this report, Jussie Smollett to face grand jury over hate crime hoax. So in this picture, he's pretty in purple, but it appears the wicked web that's been woven to try to paint him as a victim of racial harassment is boomeranging, as actual facts are surfacing to indicate that he put up a couple Nigerian bodybuilders that live where he does up to staging this attack. The way this works, in order for these issues to go to a grand jury, anywhere except in Washington, D.C., where you can pretty much do anything you want with grand juries, just ask American Inquisition Chief U1 Bob Mueller. But in Chicago, which does surprise me that it appears that they are following the true protocol of how this is supposed to work, the police investigate, they determine issues with which they are uncomfortable that appear to be crimes in nature. They present them to the district attorney. The district attorney then decides whether to proceed or not, and in this case it appears that that's what's happened, and the district attorney apparently pulling together a grand jury that apparently next week is going to look into those allegations and the credibility of Jussie Smollett for having made them about this supposed racist and homophobic attack, which now appears to be unraveling. And you can paint it any way you want as far as what the truth is, as far as why Jussie did it and what he truly did. But it appears that his whole situation is unraveling, and especially when you have people like Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi deleting her tweets that came out at the initially supporting Mr. Smollett, but now Cory Booker have gone silent on trying to defend this guy. Once again, light will shine on darkness. We'll find out in a little while what's going on. And speaking of the need to shine light on darkness, one more time from the Western Journal back to their conservative Tribune outlet. And so there's some video footage of Nathan Phillips, that stalwart Native American. And it's interesting to see the difference in how he treated those Catholic kids from Covington and how they reacted in pretty much respectful silence as he was beating his native drum inches from their face, in essence compelling them to try to react, which they did not do, versus what Nathan Phillips does when the tables are turned.
Nathan, why did you approach the high school Catholic kids? Whoa, whoa!
What location are you from?
Compare Nathan Phillips' reaction to what just took place to how Nicholas Sandmann and his buddies reacted when Nathan Phillips approached him in a way that could have, under most circumstances, resulted in some kind of confrontation, but at best was Nicholas Sandmann and the others taking abuse by Nathan Phillips and his buddies standing behind him screaming racial epithets and trying to elicit some kind of a violent reaction by those boys from the high school. Of course, the hypocrisy and double standard will not be relinquished soon. We have to just keep supporting people like Nicholas Sandmann and the others that are mistreated in this way. And you have to pray for people like Nathan Phillips and Jussie Smollett, who it appears could use some godly advice in their lives. And finally, Q continues in his posting storm and once again is trying to focus patriots on the fact that President Trump is making great headway in fighting the deep state swamp, the sewer, and the time is approaching when many of these deep state criminals will be brought to justice, asking for additional patience, but it appears that we are turning the corner, entering into phase 3 of what Q has been leading us through since November of 2016, and that is, now that the storm has come, the awakening has taken place, we are entering the stage now where justice is coming, and based on a variety of other issues that you see popping up in the news, what's happening with William Barr heading up now the Attorney General's office, and a variety of other changes being made, I would believe that we may actually be turning that corner, and although there are people that are pouting over what took place with the budget and the border wall issues last week, President Trump can only make decisions on the best information he has at the time when things are happening. And it appears that not only that the Democrats in Congress failed the American people, the Republicans in Congress did so as well, and many of those people around President Trump, it appears, did not fully brief him on some of the downfalls of that budget bill and border wall package. If he had known now what he should have known a week ago, that I believe he once again would have just done a continuing resolution and sent all the children back to the sandbox to work things out and come back to him with something that was truly representative of a compromise bill that would have at least reduced the number of landmines that it included. But once again, he made the decision based on the best information he had at the time. I believe now that we are turning the corner and headed towards stage 3 of the plan. So patience, trust the plan, trust Trump. Thank you for watching. God bless. And now the DC Hammer Show is available as an audio podcast. Just go to Podcast Garden or iTunes and search for DC Hammer or News Network Analysis Associates, NNAA.